Good day folks, Sean here from Air Photography. So this is my beginner's guide for the new DJI Neo. Now these beginner's guides are designed for those who have never flown a drone before to help get you familiarized with the hardware and the software and help you prepare for your very first flight. Now with the DJI Neo, it could be especially important because this thing is actually pretty versatile. There's many different ways in which you can utilize it and many different ways in which you can fly it. This thing can be completely autonomous where you don't need a controller to fly it. It'll take off from the palm of your hand, perform the task, and come back and land in your hand. You can also fly it with a smartphone. Again, no controller needed. But if you want more traditional drone flights, you can fly it with a controller. You can even connect it to things like the DJI Goggles 3 and a motion controller to have an immersive FPV flight. We're going to touch base with all these different modes throughout this video. Now, we're not going to go over every single aspect of the DJI Neo just because there is a lot there. So if you are interested in this drone and you will be purchasing it, make sure you're subscribed to my channel as we will be creating different tutorials and videos of very specific subjects. So to get started here, let's talk about some of the different packages if you haven't purchased one yet. The first way you'll be able to buy it is just the drone only, because if you plan on using it just in autonomous mode, you don't need any controller, you just need the drone. Basically, when you purchase the drone only kit, you get the drone. You get one battery that will be pre-installed, which we will take a look at here in a second. You get 2 spare props. You get a charging and data cable. And on top of that, you get a screwdriver, which is needed in order to change out the props. Now, if you order the combo package, basically it's the same. You get the drone and everything we've already discussed here. But on top of that, you also get a charging hub and you get 2 spare batteries. And that'll give you a total of 3 batteries, which can be important. And it's usually the kit that I recommend. Now, on top of that, depending on which country you live in, they have another bundle that also includes a controller. This is the RCN3 controller, and it can give you a more traditional drone flight, which again, we will take a look at coming up here in a minute. So let's take a quick look around the drone here, and then we're going to get into some of the other aspects. At the front here, where the camera is, we have a guard over it. And it's a good idea to keep that on when traveling with the drone. That helps keep that gimbal protected. To remove it, you just press down and it pulls right off. And you can see it is on a 1-axis gimbal. The rest of the stabilization comes from electronic image stabilization, and that's done automatically in the software while you're flying. At the front here, we have a button, and basically that is how you change the different intelligent flight modes. You can scroll through 6 preset intelligent flight modes, including a custom mode which you can customize to your own needs. And again, we will take a closer look at that when we get to the flight portion of this video. At the back here, we have our power button. That's how we turn the drone on and off. It's also how we pair it if we need to bind it to a new controller or to the goggles. At the back here, we have a USB-C port, and that can be used for 3 different purposes. Of course, that's for charging, if you want to charge the battery right inside the drone. It can also be used to update the firmware if you connect this to a computer, which we're going to be talking about firmware here coming up. And it can also be used to transfer the content over to a computer or to a mobile device, just simply by plugging it in. At the bottom here, we have a couple of sensors, and then we have our battery. To remove the battery, we press down on that tab and it comes right out. To power on the Neo, it's a double press, just like most DJI equipment. It's going to be a short press and then a long press. So we press once, short press, and then a long press. And you can see there it went ahead and powered up. And again, to power it off, it's the exact same thing. A quick press and then a long press. And that'll go ahead and power it off. Now let's go ahead and we'll talk about storage, the content that the drone captures. Usually drones have a memory card slot where it has removable memory, but with the DJI Neo it only has built-in memory, 22 gigabytes. So there is no memory card needed when using the DJI Neo. And later on in this video I'm going to show you how to access the content and how to transfer it over to a mobile device. Now the next thing we're going to talk about here is charging the DJI Neo, how to charge up the batteries. And there's 2 different methods. First off, if you got the combo, you're going to use the charging hub. Basically with this, it'll charge all 3 batteries at the same time. It's just a nice simple and quick way to get all your batteries charged up. Now one thing you'll notice that did not come with your DJI Neo is a charging brick. That is something you do have to provide on your own. Now many of us already have them. They come with things like smartphones, tablets, some laptops. So there's a good chance you already have one that is compatible. At minimum, you should use a 30-watt charger. Ideally, you want 45 watts or higher. DJI does sell them on their website. This is their 65-watt charger. It has the USB-C cable at the end. So this is fully compatible. And if you do have to buy one, there are many third-party ones available on Amazon. This one here is from Anker. This is also a 65-watt charger. It has two USB-C ports on it and a USB-A. And it is important to note when using the charging hub, if you use a 30-watt charger, it'll only charge 2 batteries at the same time. If you use a 45-watt charger or higher, it'll charge all 3 at the same time. And to charge up your batteries, you'll just take the USB-C cable that either comes with your charger or the one that comes with the DJI Neo and just plug it into the USB-C port at the side there. We have LED lights that will signify the charging progress. These two are already fully charged, so you can see they're just staying green. This one here is now finishing up. And at any given time while the batteries are installed in the charging hub, we can press the power button there, and that's going to show us how much power is in each battery. Now, if you just have the drone only and you don't have the charging hub, basically we're going to use that USB-C port on the back there to charge up the drone. It works the same way. You're just going to take your charging cable, plug it in, and these LED lights here will show you the progress of the charging. Now, if you ordered the kit with the controller, the DJI RCN3, you're going to need to charge it up as well, and there's a USB-C port at the bottom. And again, you just plug in your charging cable, and we have some LED lights there showing us the charging progress. Now, if you are new and you've never used an RCN3 controller, I'll just kind of give you a quick rundown of it. Basically, when you get it, the sticks are going to be off. They do that so you can easily transport this in a camera bag or something without damaging the gimbals there. And they store right in the bottom. So when you get it brand new, that's where they'll be located. So you just have to pull them out. And they screw in. And they are identical, so it doesn't matter which side you put them on. And just taking a look around the controller here, we have a function button on this side. That's basically how you can change different settings. You can set that to do different things. We have a return to home and a break button, a pause button. We can set our mode, our flight modes. We have sport mode, normal mode, and cine mode. Sport mode is going to be the fastest flight. Normal is just like it sounds, it's kind of normal speed. And then cine will just slow the drone down to help you get more cinematic shots. On the right hand side, we have a power button. Just a quick press on it will light up these lights here to show you how much power is in the unit. And to power it on, it's the same as the drone. It's a quick press and then a long press. You can see it will go ahead and power on. And you're going to notice when it's powered on and not connected to the drone, these lights are going to flash green. That means it's not connected to anything. Once it's made a solid connection to a drone, those will illuminate and stay solid. And to turn it off, it's the same thing, quick press and a long press. On the side, we have another button. That's how we can switch back and forth between photo and video mode. If we take a look at the top here, we have our shutter button. That's how we can stop and start recording or take a photo. And we have a gimbal wheel. That's going to raise the camera up and down, whether you want it pointing down or pointing up. And we pull the top out, and that's how we're going to mount our phone in there. Now, there's a cable that comes pre-installed. I do believe it comes pre-installed with a USB-C cable. You can see we can just pull it out. But it also comes with a lightning cable, so it depends what type of phone you're connecting it to. And it just unplugs there, you can see. So if you have to switch it out, you're going to be using the USB-C if you're using a newer iPhone or an Android device. If you're using something like an iPhone 14 or below, then you would put in the cable with the lightning connector. And to mount your phone, it just slides in there just like that. And then you just plug in the data cable. Now, there is an app that you need to download called the DJI Fly App, which we will be talking about a little bit more here coming up in a minute. So now that we've talked about all the basics about the hardware, charging, memory, before we can use it, this drone needs to be activated and the firmware needs to be updated. In order to do that, the easiest way is by using the DJI Fly App. If you're on an iPhone, you can download the DJI Fly App right from the App Store. Just search for DJI Fly. If you're on an Android device, it's not available in the Google Play Store. You have to go directly to the DJI website and you're able to download it from there. Now, my drone has been activated already, but there is some firmware that needs to be installed, so I'm just going to demonstrate that for you now. So I have my DJI app installed here, as you can see, so we're going to go ahead and launch it. Now, if you don't have a DJI account yet, you will have to go ahead and create one at this point, and you're going to go to your profile and log in. Now we're going to power on the drone. Again, a quick press and then a long press. Now, as you can see here, off to the side under quick transfer, it says new DJI Neo detected. So the app should automatically detect your Neo. It's going to use Bluetooth initially just to pair the two temporarily. So what we're going to do is click on that. And it's listing our Neo there, so we'll click on that. Now it wants us to confirm the connection for the first time. Now this is something you only have to do once, and it's asking us to press and hold the power button for 3 seconds. So that's what we're going to do. We'll press and hold it for 3 seconds. You can see it accepted that, and now it wants us to join the Wi-Fi network of the Neo. So we're going to hit join. And there we go there, it's now connected. The first time you connect, it's going to give you kind of some guidelines about what to do and what not to do. After that, it'll give you a little bit of a tutorial on how to use some of the autonomous modes, but I'm going to go ahead and skip that. Now we're going to take a closer look at this here in a second, but I want to show you how to update the firmware first. We have a button here, a little arrow, that's going to take us back to the main page of the Fly app. Now it should automatically prompt you to update the firmware. It's going to tell you that there's some firmware available, and it's going to list what's available, what the new updates are. But if for some reason it doesn't trigger automatically, what we're going to do is go to our profile, then we're going to go to settings, and then we're going to click on check for firmware updates. Now at that point, when you go to install the firmware and you've connected for the first time, it will prompt you to activate the drone first, and then it will go ahead and install the firmware. It can take anywhere from 5 minutes upward to 10 minutes, and it'll give you a confirmation on the screen when it's done. Now we're going to go out and I'm going to demonstrate some of the flight modes and different things you can do with the DJI Neo. But before we do that, I just want to show you a few things that'll be just easier to show you here at a desk. As mentioned, the DJI Neo is fully autonomous. You do not need a controller to fly it. And I'm just going to show you how to do that. We'll go ahead and we're going to power it on here. So as mentioned, we have our intelligent flight modes listed there at the top. The one that's illuminated there, that shows you what the current active one is. And we can change the different flight modes by pressing the button, just a quick press.
Circle, rocket, spotlight, direction track, follow, droney.
So that first one there called follow, basically when you put the drone up, the drone is just going to follow you around. The next one is a droney. Basically when you launch the drone, it's going to fly up and backward, kind of giving you like a drone version of a selfie.
Circle.
The next one is circle. It's just exactly what it sounds like. It's going to do a circle around you. A rocket will just fly straight up and film straight down. Spotlight one is interesting. Basically when you launch the drone, it's going to lock onto you, and no matter where you move, drone is going to rotate to make sure it's always facing you. Now it doesn't move, the drone won't move, but it will always keep you centered in the frame. And the last one there is a little picture of a human. That is a custom mode. So in the settings, which we'll take a look at here, you can customize it to do different things. Right now I have it set to something called direction track.
Direction track.
And basically that's just like the follow mode, but it's going to follow you from the front. So as you're walking forward, the drone is going to fly backwards. Now something important to keep in mind when you are going to be using these intelligent flight modes and you're launching it, you can launch it from the palm of your hand, and you want to make sure the camera is facing you, because if the camera can't detect you, it's going to abort it. So you want to make sure that the camera can get a clear view of you. And then when you're ready to launch, which we'll demonstrate here in a minute when we get outside, you're just going to do a long press. It's going to give you a verbal notification. The propellers will start up, and then it will perform the task. Now all those intelligent flight modes that we just went through can be adjusted in the DJI Fly app. So I'm just going to show you quickly how to do that, and we'll take a quick look around the Fly app. So we've gone ahead and we've launched the DJI Fly app, so we're going to hit connect. And again, it's going to connect to the drone. It'll ask us here to connect to the Wi-Fi. So now we're in the DJI Fly app, and we can do a couple different things. The first thing, let's take a look at the bottom. We have 3 buttons. We have album, control, and settings. So if we click on album, it's going to display stuff that we have stored on the internal memory. From there we can preview it and we can download it, which we're going to take a look at the end of this video. The middle button is control. This is where we can set the functionality of the different intelligent flight modes. And when we have it launched, we have the app connected to the drone, we can actually initiate all these different intelligent flight modes. As mentioned, you can do it without the controller or connected to the app, but you can also do it right from the app. You can see we have a start button there in the middle, and we can select all the different modes. We can change it to follow, droney, circle, and so on. The other thing we can do is go to manual control. Once we take off, that's going to give us some virtual joysticks. So we can actually use the DJI Fly app, our phone, and these virtual joysticks in order to control the drone. In that mode, you're basically essentially flying it like a traditional drone. Now, just to take a quick look around the rest of the interface, you can see we have this microphone icon. We can turn that on, and basically it's going to use the microphones on the phone to record audio. When we transfer the content over to our smartphone or tablet, that audio is going to be embedded into the video. Now, it's going to be using some AI to help get rid of the noise of the drone, and the audio is going to be a little bit muffled. It's not going to be super clear, but in some scenarios it's going to be more than adequate to use. Right above that, we have that little voice bubble, and you can see we get this new pop-up. Basically, the drone is going to be listening to voice commands. We can actually control the drone with our voice. We can actually initiate some of these intelligent flight modes. Okay, so I'm just going to demonstrate quickly here how that voice command works. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the talk bubble there, and that's going to allow the drone to listen to us. You can see that graphic there at the bottom. Now I'm just going to turn it off here for a minute so I don't accidentally give it a command. You do have to be careful of that. But when that bubble is up, that means the drone is actively listening for different commands. And if you want to know what commands you're able to give to it, again, bring up the talk bubble, click on check settings, and you can see here it shows us some of the different commands we have for recording, following, and safety. So I'm just going to demonstrate the spotlight. So let's turn on the talk bubble, and all I have to do is simply say spotlight.
Spotlight. 3, 2, 1.
So as you can see, as soon as it heard the word spotlight, it just went into the spotlight mode. And that works for most of the different intelligent flight modes. When using voice command, you can still launch it from the palm of your hand, or as you've seen there, you can launch it from a surface. At the top there, it gives us our signal strength to the drone, the Wi-Fi signal strength, and it gives us our battery percentage. If we go over to settings, here we can adjust the different parameters of the intelligent flight modes. For example, if we go into follow, it's going to give us a preview of what it does, but we can change the follow distance from close to medium to far. We can change the follow height from low, flat to high. And again, if we go to Droney, it gives us different options. We can set how far back it flies. We can go from 2 meters all the way up to 10. We can set it to rise, which basically it flies backwards, but also it increases the height. Or we can just have it go straight out. And every intelligent flight mode has different parameters in which you can set. Now, once you've set it in the app, those settings are remembered on the drone. So even if you go to power on the drone some other time, anything you've changed there will be retained in the drone until you change it in the app the next time. And as mentioned just quickly here, there's that custom mode. You can see I have it set to direction track, but you can set it to a helix, a boomerang, or as mentioned, direction track. So you'll just have to play around with them and see what you like. Below that, we can change our camera settings. We can record at 4K or 1080. We can choose the codec, and we can choose some different aspect ratios. If we scroll down to the bottom, this is how we manage the internal memory. We can format it to delete everything, but make sure you've transferred everything over, because when you format it, that will delete anything that's on there. But it's a quick way to delete everything at once. And then if we go over to more settings, we can do some calibrations here. If we get errors, it'll prompt you to do a calibration. We can set whether we want metric or imperial, and we can go over to about, and it's going to give us some information about our drone, firmware versions, and if we have any problems, we can do a reset. Now, if you decide that you are going to fly it with a controller, I'll just show you quickly. It works very similar. We connect our phone, we launch the DJI Fly app, and then we just hit go fly. Now you're going to notice the interface is quite a bit different compared to when you're using it just on a phone. And if you've ever flown any DJI drone in the past, you can see the interface is very similar. At the right hand side here, we can switch between photo and video. We can also initiate the quick shots like Droney or Helix or those different flight modes. At the top here, again, it gives us our battery information. It also gives us our RC signal strength to the drone, so you can keep an eye on that to make sure that you have a good solid connection. And it'll tell you how many satellites you're connected to. Right now we're connected to 0 because we're indoors. We just got 1 there. But when you're outside, that will jump up and it will set a home point, because the DJI Neo does support return to home when flying with a controller like this. And we're going to take a closer look at how that works when we're out doing our tests. And those three dots at the right hand side, this is where we can change different settings of the drone, but we're not going to get into that into this video. We're just going to basically look at functionality. So with all that said, let's go out and we'll do some tests, and I'll do some demonstrations to show you how it works. So I'm just going to do a couple quick demonstrations on how to use the Neo. As mentioned, there's different ways in which we can fly it. We can fly it fully autonomously without a controller, just by using the buttons on the front of the drone there. We can fly it with a traditional controller, and we can fly it with goggles and an FPV controller. So it is extremely versatile, and there's many different ways in which you can enjoy it. Now, before you go out for your first flight, just make sure you check the local regulations, drone laws in your area. Every country is a little bit different on their drone regulations, so you just want to make sure you know all the rules and regulations before you fly. It's also a good idea to check the weather. You don't want to fly on extremely windy days. That can affect the drone performance, and especially if you're a beginner and you're just learning to fly, you want a nice calm day with not a lot of wind. And it's also a good idea to find a nice open area. This maybe for a beginner wouldn't be the best location. There's just a lot of trees and stuff. You know, for a beginner, you should find a nice open area, perhaps not many people around, just until you get to learn how the drone moves and behaves. We're going to start out with the autonomous mode without using a controller. And a lot of people are really going to make use of that feature because it's just so quick and simple to deploy. You're going to find you're going to use it a lot more just because you don't have to worry about, turning on a controller, making sure everything's connected. You can just get some really interesting shots, if you're a vlogger or you want to capture some family vacations, or you're a hiker and you want to capture some of your hikes. And as mentioned, we just use this button on the front here, and we can just cycle through to whatever mode we want.
Droney. Circle.
So I'm going to do a circle. And as I shown you earlier, you can set some of the parameters of that circle mode, but I'm just going to leave it on default for now. So when you're ready to take off, you've set your mode there. All you have to do is press and hold the button there right above the camera. And it's important to make sure the camera's facing you. It has to visually see you. If it doesn't, it'll give you an error. So I'm going to press and hold.
2 meters. Circle. 3, 2, 1.
So you can see the drone is just taken off from the palm of my hand, and it's now just moving back. Move this camera up so you can see it. And you can see it starting to do the rotation. It's just kind of going around me right now. I'll play the video as well so you can see it. Right now it's just in behind me there. And there it's gone back to where it took off from. It's flying back to me. And now I can just put my hand right under it, and it's going to go ahead and land. And it's a good idea before you do any of these intelligent flight features, make sure that there's not a lot of obstacles around, because there is no obstacle avoidance on the DJI Neo. So if there's a tree or something, it can fly right into the tree. Now the Neo does have ducted props, and there's a propeller guard over it. So chances are if it does bump into something, it could just bounce off and push on through. It is a very durable drone, so even if it does hit something and falls to the ground, chances of it being damaged are very minimal. So that's how simple and easy it is to use. So that was a circle. Now we can change it. Let's do a droney.
Rocket. Spotlight. Direction trap. Follow. Droney.
So same thing. Just want to make sure the camera's pointed at you. We'll press and hold the button.
10 meters. Droney. 3, 2, 1.
Drone again is going to take off from the palm of my hand, and now it's moving back, going to do the droney. Yeah, and again, make sure there's no trees or any obstacles behind it, because it can't see anything behind it. So, it could potentially fly into an obstacle. So now it's coming back. And again, it'll come right to us. We just have to put our hand out, and it will land right in our hand. Here it comes. So yeah, so easy to just capture some interesting footage. It even supports tracking. I'll just show you that quickly here. Again, we'll launch the drone, make sure the camera's facing you.
3, 2, 1.
So the drone is now launched, and it's locked onto me. And as I move, you're going to see the drone is going to follow me. So yeah, you can see that works extremely well. Now when you're using the follow, it does a good job at following you exactly where you walked. Again, there's no obstacle avoidance, so you do have to take some precautions. So the autonomous mode is just a great way to capture simple and easy footage. Now, as mentioned, we can also connect the drone to our smartphone with the Fly app, and we have full access to all those intelligent flight features, and we can initiate them right from our phone. For example, let's switch it to circle again. So you can see there I have it on circle. I can hit the start button.
3, 2, 1.
And again, it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to go into position there, and it's going to perform the circle around me. So using your smartphone is an interesting way. It just allows you to kind of get a visual feed of what the drone is seeing, so if you want to adjust stuff. But it's also how you can change the settings, like how far the circle is. It's coming back now.
Landing.
So you can see that was quick and easy, and we get a visual feed right on our phone. But it is important because this is how we can set some of the parameters. You can see we did a 2-meter circle, but you can go all the way up to a 20-meter circle. Now, if you're going to do something like a 20-meter circle, you do have to make sure you have lots of space around you because, again, it could fly into an obstacle. Also, as mentioned earlier on, using the app with the drone connected to it, we can put it into manual mode. Let's go ahead and we're going to take off here. As you can see there, we now get some virtual joysticks, and we can control the drone manually, kind of like similar to flying with a traditional controller. It's fairly easy to control. Now, you're going to get better precision and movements if you're using a physical controller. But yeah, using these virtual joysticks can help you get some shots if you just want to capture something quickly. So yeah, just an interesting way to get a little bit of footage. You can use the preview on the screen to see what the drone sees. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And even when in this manual mode, all you have to do is put your hand under it, and it will still go ahead and land even though you're in manual mode. So next we're going to connect it to a controller, and I'll just show you a little bit how that works. So now I've gone ahead and I've connected the DJI Neo to the DJI RC. Now there's several different controllers that are compatible with the DJI Neo, and I've already made a video about that. Now I'll include a link to that video down in the description of this video if you're curious about what controllers and what gear are compatible with the DJI Neo. Now using a controller is going to be the ideal situation for a lot of people because they want a more traditional drone flight. But that's the beautiful thing about the Neo, is that it's very versatile. You can fly it autonomously, you can fly it with a controller, or you can fly it with FPV goggles and have a more traditional FPV immersive flight. So it is a really versatile drone, and it's going to be the perfect choice for a lot of people. Now, a couple things before you fly with a controller, a couple things to note is if we take a look at our settings, we'll click on those 3 dots there. You can see we have some safety settings, so it's a good idea to go in and check that. If there's any compass issues or it needs to be calibrated, you'll get a warning there. And that's how you calibrate it if it asks you to calibrate. But the other important thing to note is your return to home altitude, because if you happen to get disconnected or the battery gets too low, the drone's going to automatically come home to you. And it uses GPS, so you want to make sure you have enough satellites, which we'll take a look at here in a second. But setting your return to home altitude is basically the height at which the drone's going to go to when it gets disconnected or it comes home. So you want to make sure you have that set to higher than the tallest obstacle. I usually leave mine around 100 meters, but something like 40 meters or 60 meters is usually adequate as well. And you can just adjust that slider there to set it to whatever you need. Before you take off, you want to make sure you have enough satellites. And we can tell how many satellites we have by that icon at the top right-hand side. You can see currently I'm connected to 14. We can actually click on it and it'll give us some more information. It's telling me that right now I'm weak. Now it's because I'm moving the drone around, it's kind of losing its signal. The other thing, you want to make sure that a home point has been set. Now it will set the home point automatically once it achieves enough satellites, and you'll get an audible notification that the home point has been set. But you can also check that visually by clicking on the map. You can see if the map is closed, it's that little icon down in the left hand side. If we click on it, brings up our map, and we can actually click on the map and it's going to bring it bigger so we can get a better look around. It's kind of hidden behind that little photo there, but that yellow circle is our home point. So you want to make sure that has been set and it's accurate to where you're flying from before you take off. And when we take off, there's two different ways in which we can do it. The most common way, and especially as a beginner, is just to use the takeoff button on the screen. And all we have to do is press on it. We get a pop-up that says take off, and then we just have to press and hold. The drone's going to power up, and then it will take off. Flying in this mode, you do not have to have the camera facing you when you take off, unlike when you're in the autonomous mode. You can take off from the palm of your hand still, or you can have it take off from the ground. But because it is so small, you've got to take off from a hard surface. It's a good idea to get something like a landing pad or take off from concrete or asphalt. Trying to take off from grass or sand isn't a good idea. So now I'm not going to go over every detail of the Fly app, but you can see, we're in video mode right now. We can change our modes by clicking that button there at the side. You can see we can put it in photo mode, video mode, or we can enable our quick shots. We can still do quick shots even though we're using a controller. So at this point, it's just a matter of getting comfortable with the stick movements, seeing what everything does. But I'll just show you quickly here. We'll start with the left stick. That controls our altitude, basically moving the drone up and down. And it also will rotate the drone. So for example, if I press up on the stick, you can see the drone is raising. If I press down or pull down, the drone is going to lower. If I push to the right, the drone is going to turn to the right. If I push it to the left, the drone is going to rotate to the left. The right stick is our forward movement and reverse, but it is also side to side. So for example, if I push forward, the drone is moving forward. If I pull back, the drone is going to move backward. If I push to the left, the drone is going to move to the left. So as a beginner, if this is the first drone you've ever flown, I would definitely get a big open area and just slowly move the sticks just to see how the drone behaves. As you get comfortable and get more experience, you'll be able to use a combination of both sticks to get some really interesting movements. You can do like manual rotations. And you can just get some really dynamic movements that look really good on video. I'm just going to put the drone up here and we're just going to go a little bit of ways. I'm going to show you how the return to home works. So return to home will be triggered in 3 different ways. First of all, if you hit return to home on the controller here, that return to home button, or if you hit it on the screen, again, that side button there will bring up the return to home option. The second way is if the battery gets too low. You can see here if we click on the battery, it's going to show us how much battery is remaining, how much flight time we have, but it'll also show us how long before the return to home gets triggered, because the drone is going to decide how much power it needs to get back to where it took off safely. The other is a fail-safe return to home, and that's basically if your controller gets disconnected from the drone, perhaps you've flown out too far or there's some interference, the drone will automatically come back to where it took off from. The other interesting thing to note is that we have a virtual home point. I'm just going to spin the drone around here. And you can see that big yellow H. That's where we took off from. So if you ever lose your orientation up in the sky, just move the drone around and find that yellow H and just fly back to it. So you always know exactly where you took off from. So now I'm going to do a return to home manually. I'm going to press the return to home on the controller. I'm going to press and hold.
Return to home.
And you can see that green bar has appeared. That's a visual reference of the path the drone is going to take to get back to the home point. So right now the drone is moving up to what we have set as the height, which is 105 meters, I think I set it at. So it's going to go straight up until it hits that height, and then it's going to come right back to us, and then come right down. When it's doing an automatic return to home, it's a good idea to always keep a visual eye on the drone and where it's flying, because you can cancel it at any time by hitting that red X at the side of the screen. You just want to make sure that it's not going to fly into an obstacle. So the drone is right above us right now. You can see the camera is pointed down, so you can see where it took off from. We see that yellow H. I can hear it above me right now. And again, at this point, it's a good idea to keep an eye on the screen, just so you know it's not going to hit any obstacles as it's coming down. And the return to home is pretty accurate. It just uses GPS, so it will get you within a few feet of where you took off from. So here it comes here, and it will just go ahead and land on the ground, or you can put your hand out and have it land in your hand. And there we go. And it is very accurate and very reliable. So if this is going to be your first drone, perhaps you're a little bit apprehensive about what happens if you get disconnected, or if you fly too far, or the battery gets too low. With DJI, it's very reliable. All their drones, the return to home works extremely well. If you get disconnected, the battery gets too low, there's some interference, you know the drone is always going to come back to where you took off from. So now I'm just going to demonstrate quickly how to get the content that you've captured on your Neo over to your device. Now I'm going to be demonstrating on an iPad, but it works the same whether you're transferring content to a tablet or a phone. Now there's two different ways in which we can transfer content over. One is by using the DJI Fly App and transferring the content over that way, or we can plug the drone directly in. So I'll show you both methods here. The first thing we're going to do is launch our DJI Fly App, and we're going to power on the Neo. Once it's powered on, we're going to connect to our Neo. Once we've launched the Neo, we just want to get over to our album. As you can see, here's all the content that's currently stored on the Neo. And what we can do is just select whatever videos we want to transfer. And then we just tap the download button there. As you can see, it gives us a progress bar. It shows us the percentage and the transfer speed at which it's transferring. Once it's done transferring, all that footage will be in the camera roll or the album on whatever device you're using. So that works well. It's quick, easy, and simple. Now the other way to do it is by plugging the Neo directly into your device. Now as mentioned, I am demonstrating on an iPad, so we're going to be using the Files app to transfer the content. If you use Android device, I'm not completely familiar with Android, but it will be a similar method. So I'm going to go ahead here and launch the Files app. I'm going to take a USB-C cable, plug it into the back of the Neo. And one interesting thing is you don't even need to power on your Neo. In fact, you don't even need to have a battery in it. Once we attach it, it's going to become a location. So we've got the Neo plugged in. Now I'll plug it into my iPad and just give it a second, and you'll see it appear over here on the side. And there it is there. It says internal storage. So we can click on that. Go to the DCIM folder, DJI 001, and there's all the content currently stored on the DJI Neo's internal memory. So just like any file management on an iPad, we can select whatever files we want to transfer and then move them to the appropriate location. And similarly, if you're going to be transferring content over to a laptop or a desktop, you can plug the Neo directly into it. It'll just become a drive letter that you can go in and browse the files. Now there's a lot more we can do with this drone, a lot of settings, but we're going to save that for separate videos. So if this is a drone that you are interested in and you're going to be purchasing, or you have just purchased it, make sure you're subscribed, because there could be a lot of videos that I upload that you might find helpful or interesting. Now, as mentioned, you can also fly the DJI Neo with goggles and an FPV controller for a more immersive flight. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate that in this video. We're going to keep this video kind of more basic, about basic operation. But I will be making a separate video on how that works. It's going to be more geared to beginners as well. I'll show you how to connect the goggles, how to pair them to the drone, how to set it up and get ready for your first flight. So keep an eye out for that if you're new and you're just purchasing the DJI Neo. Well folks, that is basically it. That's some basic functionality of the DJI Neo. If you've just purchased it, you're going to absolutely love this drone. It is a lot of fun. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and got some value out of it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. It's always greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.